This week is Let's Talk with your host, Larry Cenotto.
Thank you for once again joining us on Let's Talk. This week, let's talk about second unit dwellings. That's rather an abstruse subject. I think you'll find out a little bit more about. And planning generally with the chairman or chairwoman or chair of the Amador County Planning Commission, Barbara Sinnett, and Commissioner Hap Evans. Welcome.
Hi, Larry.
Nice to see you again. How long has it been? Hap, nice to see you. First time, I think.
First time
at least
up here,
I've had a chance, yeah. How long has it been since we chatted before?
I think 3 years, grand jury.
3 years? Oh. Let's get a few things out of the way. Let's see, you're wearing blue and red, and if we had white, we'd be
We've got
all
the white
set.
in front of us.
Yeah. You can't see, they're both wearing boots. And whether this is the required uniform of a planning commissioner in Amador County or not, I'm not sure. What are you, cowboys or
Well,
cowgirls
we
or
haven't
what?
taken them off in a year and a half since we got on this.
Well, really, it's
commission,
necessary
you know,
to
it's-
wear them in our meetings.
It gets
because
that deep? Is that
Very well put.
Oh, dear, dear. Hap, let's start with you. All right, Hap. I've said that 3 times now. Dare I even speculate what Hap means? I won't. I'll just let you answer the question.
It was a nickname given to me when I was a wee tyke, and once I learned it, I forgot what my real name was, so that's all I answered to.
But just between us, what is your real name?
I don't remember it. I have to remember every 4 years when I renew my driver's license. Other than that, I can't keep up with it.
So you won't tell us?
I can't
We
remember.
have scoops every week on this program. and You won't
aware
even
of
give
that.
us your
And there are some people within the county who will be glad to help you if you can find them.
Horatio?
It's a possibility, huh?
Call in
If
now
you were
if you
named
know
Horatio,
Hap's
you
true
would,
name.
you too would go by Hap.
How long have you been retired as highway patrolman? I think there's some unfortunates out there that you probably gave a ticket to, and otherwise others say that's the guy that protected our lives in the highways. When did all that stop?
September 30th, 1988.
Gee, that long already. What have you been doing with yourself besides the planning commission after all that? For 10 years, basically.
First, I was very active with Native Sons in state office,
I see that on your license plate. Yeah.
and then I got active with the Masonic Lodge in state office, or district office. And I've been working for the Sheriff's Department on an on-call basis, doing a little traveling, enjoying life.
Sounds good. How long were you in the highway patrol?
30 years, 6 months to the day.
And you can retire after 20 years or 25 years, or how does that work?
You can retire, I guess once you turn 50, you can retire and start drawing your pay. I retired a couple, 3 years after that, and when I reached 75%.
When did you get to Amador County and why?
I got to Amador County January about the 15th, 1972. Officially assigned here in January 1st of 72 because I wanted to get out of the Bay Area.
I mean, to urban highway patrolmen say, hey, I've had enough of this. I want to get, is it an easier assignment or less stressful, or what's the lure?
Lifestyle. You become more part of the community, such as I am now, with Lodge and Native Sons and Planning Commission and all things like this that you just don't have a shot at in the larger communities. More relaxed way of life, knowing your neighbors, watching the kids in the community grow up.
I think you've convinced me. Yeah, it was probably a wise move that you made. We better bring the chairwoman into the conversation here
you
for
better.
a minute, because she's got the heavy.
She will wield the gavel. She's very good at that.
Understand. What have you been doing besides planning commission work for the last year and a half?
Well, actually, other than planning commission work and work, and a family and 2 boys playing sports 3 to 4 times a year each. That's pretty much a full-time schedule.
Yeah, I would think so.
Somewhat. Actually, I gave up a lot of other volunteer things when I was appointed to the Planning Commission because I didn't want to spread myself too thin.
Did you spread yourself too thin?
I would have, for sure. That would have been, I think, too much to do, so.
How much time does it take to be a planning commissioner? I suppose chair takes a little bit longer or a lot longer, I'm not sure. How much time does it take?
Well, we meet once a month, sometimes twice a month, and there's probably 5 hours worth of reading and some phone calls if you're not sure on what's in the package before the meeting. And then I think if you want to do some things that are proactive and do some things that are going to benefit the county, taking on a couple of projects like that, it's somewhat unlimited, and you'd have to control yourself, I think, with how much time you could spend on it, because you could go on and on and on with things that you want to improve in the county.
Yeah. You've both been on the planning commission about the same time, I understand. How did that come about? You, District 3, so you were appointed by Richard Vinson.
Right. When Richard was appointed by the governor, when the seat was vacated.
How about, how did you get there?
Well, about the same time that Barbara was appointed, I was appointed. In my case, one of the planning commissioners, the planning commissioner who preceded me, Frank Costa, resigned because he was going to back another candidate for the board. And Tom Baymert called and said, will you take it? And filled me in on some of the things that were happening, and I agreed to. And here I am.
I've obviously been longtime friends, but why did you suddenly think that, hey, I think I want to be on the planning commission?
Probably the same reason I accepted a position on the fair board.
Are you on the fair board right now?
I was.
Oh, you were.
Well, I wasn't reappointed by the governor.
Oh, well, you're perhaps, are you Republican or Democrat? Didn't that have something to do with
I am
it?
a very good Republican.
Yeah, okay. That happens every once in a while. So neither one of you have been on that long.
No.
Year and a half. And we'll have a little bit longer stay since we both filled that extra year. So our 4 years started in January. So.
What have, generally speaking, you've been there a year and a half, what have you learned about this whole business that perhaps had you known that, you'd say, hey, I didn't want any part of this? Or maybe you didn't at all. What have you learned since you've been there? I mean, people don't realize how tough this is, or it's a lot easier than it looks, or, you know, what's the essence of it?
I don't think it's as hard as it might be meant to be. Gathering the information and gleaning it from the annual or monthly pass out we get from staff is probably the most involved, the most work at it.
Government is so complicated today, it seems to me, as a lay person.
Read some of the stuff that we have to read.
Yeah. What did you learn?
In the beginning, I thought
know?
it was overwhelming as far as the variety of topics. You know, one week it's something having to do with environmental or toxic hazards, and then, you know, and then the next month it's use permits. But after a while, some of the issues got a little repetitive, and you could use the information from the last meeting, and it's gotten easier, and I think I'm more comfortable with it than I thought I would be as far as knowing the material.
No surprises?
No. Actually, it's a lot more enjoyable than I thought. I was, I think, more worried that it was going to be really controversial.
In the last year and a half, there really hasn't been, at least I can't remember, any some big issues where the crowds were there and, you know, the emotions were high.
Cellular antennas drew a lot of people out of the woodwork.
I forgot about that one, yeah.
Yeah, but that's probably the most controversial.
That and the development down in Buena Vista.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that has ramifications yet we haven't seen, has it?
Possibilities there, yes.
That might be a subject for another program. Interesting, perhaps, theoretical question. Both appointed. This relationship between the appointer and the appointee. What is it? Is there any? Are you totally free agents? Do you, okay, you appointed me, see ya, and then you go off and do what you think is right? What's the deal?
I think it's very independent. I've never discussed how I'm going to vote on a particular issue with Richard ahead of time, nor would I, because I really try to keep an open mind until I get to the meeting. I really wouldn't know which way I was going to vote anyway. And so there isn't really much point in talking to him, because there's so many other opinions and staff reports and people that come to speak about an issue that I think you're pretty well informed by the time it's time to vote. And we pretty much know the way I think we're going to vote on most issues based on the input.
Usually the
meetings.
supervisor has a crack at it at his or her level, so it isn't like this is do or die. But in a case where I know there are some issues that stop at the planning commission,
I would
mean, would
say
the
most-
supervisor ever say, you know, this is the way I look at this?
Most issues stop at the planning commission that we've
Okay.
dealt with, actually.
All right.
Use permits and variances.
So anyway, absolutely no instructions, no guidance from your appointee.
No, no. In fact, Tom told me, he says, what you do is vote your conscience. You're there, it's your job.
Okay.
He might not always agree with what I do. He might, I don't know.
It's curious, at least about this subject that we're going to be talking about here, but later on the program, the second unit dwelling. I think, from what I think I understand, you both vote when it was at the supervisorial level. I think Vincent, you know, you're both voting the same way. I think as the people who appointed.
As our appointed.
As the people who
appointed,
appointed.
I guess
yeah.
it is.
One other question for you. You getting flack still from anybody, or did you ever? Because I think you did originally, because you're a realtor, and somehow realtors, you know, those crass people are not supposed to be, you know, on planning commissions.
Nope.
Never a problem with that? Let's talk about the planning commissions itself. Who's on it besides you two?
Connie Sherrill is in the Jackson district, and Connie's new
Richard Escamilla appointed.
in January.
Okay.
Connie works for AAA in Jackson. She's an insurance agent. And Jerry Mendelson, who has been on the Planning Commission for quite some time.
Yes.
And
And,
Brian
Right.
Jobson.
all right. What's coming up with the planning commission? Stephanie Giagostini is, some people would say, finally resigning as of May 30th, I think it is. Opening on the board, ergo an opening on the planning commission. How does this work?
We can only assume that the new appointee will either reappoint Brian or appoint someone of that
So
person's
Brian
choice.
Jobson represents District 5, Stephanie's appointee in effect, and so that one also is problematic then at this time.
It's up in the air, I'd put it that way.
Yeah, Brian is the veteran. He's been on the commission a long time. I mean, you lose him, you lose, regardless of whether you agree with his opinions, you use a lot of
This is true.
moxie, intelligence, institutional knowledge, whatever you want to call it. What's it like to have such a rookie planning commission? Is that a problem?
I don't think we can really compare with a, quote, experienced, unquote, planning commission. We're not familiar with one.
Well, I mean, do you feel no problem, even though you haven't
I
been
think
there that
being
long?
green, you know, is a benefit, because we can admit to each other that we don't know things, and we're all, I think, pretty excited to learn things, and I think we're undertaking a lot of projects where we're moving in that direction, where if we're not familiar with the particular item or an ordinance, you know, we're looking into those issues.
We're not afraid to ask the silly questions.
Yeah, I think that's really true.
And we do.
Someone said none of them are silly,
Yeah.
which is probably...
The one that's unasked, this is true, but
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes something will seem very obvious, but you'll ask anyway, just to be sure that what you think is obvious is in reality what it is.
Yeah. Is the commission polarized in any way, either by ideology, party, whatever? I mean, I think it has been in the past to some extent. How's it going these days?
I think it goes very well. Most of the stuff that we have before us is routinely decided with a unanimous vote, or decided with a unanimous vote. A few issues have come up 4-1, but it's not always the same one who is opposing. Only one instance just worked out that way. We had a 3-2 vote, and it happened to be the men against the women.
Yep.
And
Dare I inquire what that issue was?
it had to do with a flower garden or sale of flowers. Or
An iris garden.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And we just didn't agree. I think
So
we're probably looking at
it
different
is
values.
pretty much, you're saying it's not really predictable how this planning commission might vote. I mean, you can, oh, there's old so-and-so, you know how he votes. I mean, that's not necessarily
Oh,
the
I
case
would
any
say
longer?
it's not that way at all.
No.
I think we were able to talk each other into things a lot of times, and
Well, generally, as we prepare, as we approach the vote, we're modifying things within what we're discussing so
Yeah,
that we can
we
reach
compromise.
agreement. And we can get it out and through.
This is interesting. You're actually saying that you are persuaded during the meeting.
oh, absolutely.
I mean, you know, cynical would say, you know, everybody's got their mind made up before they get into a place in a lot of cases, but
No,
not that.
Not at all.
it can't be that way. What's the sense of having a public hearing if you're not going to listen to what's being said?
That's always the charge. You're not
Right.
listening to us.
Right.
Your minds are already
Yeah.
made up. You know that as well as I do. Rookies, how do you learn besides, unlike supervisors, they have a school or something, new supervisors run off and go to, anything like that for planning commission people?
After we've been on for about a year, we went to school.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? You don't do it?
I think there was one when we shortly after we came on, or maybe just before we
Yeah, I
came
think we
on.
just missed it. Yeah.
So this year when Connie came on, the three of us went to a school over in Davis, and very informative.
I think we'll break now and then we'll talk about the state of planning. I forgot to start my watch, so I don't have the slightest idea where we are, but Tom will tell me after the break.
Talk with your host, Larry Cenotto.
Thank you for staying with us, and let's talk. We continue our conversation with Barbara Sinnett and Hap Evans from the Amador County Planning Commission about planning things in general, and also coming up this discussion about this second unit dwelling that perhaps you have heard about. Before that, what's the state of planning in the county? Is there any? Is anything going on? No building, no major developments? You people have anything to do?
We've had some short meetings. We
Which
had
is
one
nice.
a half-hour meeting, but
School board goes until, you know, the next day, so you don't want that.
yeah. But actually, Larry, I'm excited that I think that we have a good planning commission that wants to be proactive, and because we were all green and we started relatively at the same time, one of the things that we're doing is taking a look at what all the ordinances are in the county, and to see if there's some way that we can describe what our ordinances are, so that when members of the general public come in and they want to bring a business into this county, they know what the fees are and what the time restraints will be and what the whole process is, and make the government a little more user-friendly to people that want to do things in the county, because I think we're competing with other counties that are doing that, and that's people are going to go where it's easier to do things and where the costs are known. And I think there's some things that we can improve upon here that we need to do.
Hasn't the county done that? I mean, I guess they've been aware of these problems for a long time. Haven't they made improvements in their procedures?
Well, we definitely have a problem with traffic impact fees.
All right, what is it, Hap? What's the problem with traffic impact fees?
Well, we really don't have an ordinance, and we're flying by the seat of our pants on it.
There you go.
I thought you had all these studies, and the studies say, you know, you pay so much from so far from where. You don't have.
There are studies, and there are some county roads will come, or Public Works comes up and says, well, we should have this much for this, but there isn't an ordinance which really sets out
Lets everybody know.
right exactly who's involved and so on from there. So we're taking, if we went by what the what do they call it, the model is, the cost would be a lot more than it has been. It would be, you might say, exorbitant. Probably half again as much as we have been going for, and we try to keep it down and within reason as far as the impact fees for the traffic is concerned.
Might be prudent not to have an ordinance then, if that's what's going to happen, huh?
Well, if they're going to have to come up with something so that it can be legitimately, can't think of the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, applied to the...
Applied, yeah.
yeah.
Good word.
Is there any development going on, and why not, if there's not?
Well, there isn't a lot going on, and one of the reasons why the traffic study needs to be made is that the traffic model has a lot of pie-in-the-sky improvements, you know, such as the Kennedy bypass, and you know, it's not likely that we're going to undertake all those. And so we've done a study that says, gee, if we undertake all these, you know, it'll be $2 billion.
Yeah.
And let's charge everybody $12,000 a lot for new development. Or if you want to open up a business and you're talking about commercial, you'll be assessed a fee. And so it's difficult when somebody wants to talk about opening up a company in Amador County and building a commercial building to house people. We really can't sit down with them and say, your traffic fees will be this. And that's a problem, because you're not going to know what your fees are until you're pretty far into the process.
So the basic fees are school impact fees, and then...
Those are set. That's not a problem.
So they know that. They know
are.
that. So you want something like the schools have as far as road, but then you still
Right.
have other fees besides that, don't you?
You know most of the fees.
Oh, you know.
Really.
So that's the one that's just the...
That's a biggie.
That's
and
good.
it's uncertain.
Biggie, yeah.
Uncertain. How's the general plan? Does it need to be updated? Any new elements added? Where do we stand in that whole area?
That's a good question. Recently, we had a development come through the Planning Commission, and we heard endless testimony on it. And when it got to the end, the person who put the development through or applied for it, we felt met all the qualifications of the zoning. So we passed it and recommended its approval, and it was turned down by the board. So we need a little bit of guidance there. Are we going to go by the Planning Commission or the planning program, or whatever you want to call it, the plan, the county plan, or are we going to reject things because although they meet the plan, for some reason we don't think they should go.
Sometimes things get much more political at the board level than they do down at the planning commission
Yeah.
level, right? So that the two factors are involved.
Two factors, yeah.
What's on the paper and what's
In the head.
in the head, and political and this type of thing. How's the, as candid as you can be, how's the staff? How's the planning staff?
I think it's good.
Yeah, really good.
Really good? Who is basically the staff that provides your staff work?
I start with Gary Clark and Susan Grijalva, Mike Israel.
Steve Baranko and Shirley, the Planning Commission Secretary.
You were talking a while ago about lists and things like that to expedite the process. Has the process been expedited, and is it better since they're in the new building and where they have the one-stop shopping, or whatever you want to call it?
I don't know if we can really comment on that because they were already in the new building when we came aboard.
Oh, all right.
They have
Is that
changed
working?
things. It seems to be. The big problem we heard at our last meeting was the fellow that got dinged for how many different water district or fire district, one of the water district, I think it was. He got assessed a water district assessment here, and then there was a change in the setup of the way the water system was working or whatever. It was taken over by another entity, and he got reassessed, and how many assessments he got, I lost track of. Those are the things that you just can't put up with. The people shouldn't have to put up with it. So things like that, they do have to be ironed out. They have to be delineated very clearly.
Seems like it's working pretty well. I mean, you can go to one place and one big counter, and presumably just about everything you need in this area is there to help you out?
Yes and no.
Okay, that's why I asked the question.
You've got most of the county government stuff, but then you get to the fire, elsewhere,
Down the hall.
water, another
Different
building.
Does anyone have all of these
district,
things?
different
I mean, So many things impinge on every issue these days. It's almost like you could have the whole representative from every branch of government in one. You know, I mean,
I think in other counties you do. You have a government building and everybody that's in the county government's in that building. And I think that's one of our problems.
one of the problems.
Where do they go
Spread
for
out.
health permits now?
Well, environmental health is in the same building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get closer to the subject at hand. Let's find out what the Affordable Housing Committee is, and you tell us what that is, and then we'll go from there.
I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee, as is Brian Jobson.
Is this a creature of the Board of Supervisors, or law, or what?
Actually,
where's it come from?
the Affordable Housing Committee is mandated by the Amador County General Plan. And they are supposed to meet every couple of years and address the housing element and make sure that affordable housing
Every
is
couple of years,
being
whether they need to or not.
looked into. Actually, nothing's been done since 1992. That there really hasn't been an affordable housing committee. So we were behind in getting together on the committee and looking at affordable housing.
State law sort of says thou shalt have affordable housing, but they really
Right.
don't tell you how to do it or when you have to do it, sort of one of those deals.
Actually, they do have some pretty strict guidelines, and in the past, there's never been any penalties. And the concern always is, if we don't do this, is the state ever going to pull grant financing and things like that? There's some things that they could do to us if we didn't comply. They haven't yet, but it's a Republican governor, and if things changed, you could be looking at some penalties for not complying with affordable housing.
Was the project in Jackson Valley, was that supposed to be affordable housing? The one that was shot down?
No.
That had nothing to do with that?
No, that was just a general housing development. Where was it, 1 acre parcels?
1 acre parcels, which was what it was zoned for. And the affordable housing plan down there was before our time,
Yeah.
so we didn't look at that.
All right, we're going to confront the issue while we're here,
Okay.
and I don't know much about it, and I don't suppose the folks out there know much about it either, so be as, as methodical and simple as you can about this thing, but because it gets real complicated, and the producer will get, so make it,
A little irate, maybe?
yeah, well, so make it that way.
Vociferous?
We've been reading about second unit dwellings or what have you, and I'm not sure a lot of folks know what that is, and I'm not sure I do exactly either. So let us just kind of start with a general definition. How'd this all come about? Who's pushing second unit developments? What is second unit development? Starts.
Well, in the mid-1980s, the state of California said that you will allow secondary family dwelling units, and that you had an opportunity as a county to enact your own ordinance to have different guidelines than the state, or if for health and safety reasons you didn't think that you could have secondary dwelling units, you could pass an ordinance against them, and that's what the county did. And the county passed an ordinance that said we wouldn't have them under any circumstances whatsoever.
Anyone else do that? We have 58 counties in the state. How many other counties did that?
There are no other counties that I'm aware of that don't allow secondary dwelling units. There are certainly a variety of conditions attached to them, but none that just don't allow them.
What, just theoretically, hypothetical, what kind of health situation could there be, for a whole county that you wouldn't want? I mean, what are they talking about, health or safety? Somebody give me a good reason why, well, because of that, we can't have for these second units. You think of one?
Not having sat in on the original discussions on it, it's awful hard to come up with it, whether it would be the septic systems, which were failing earlier in, going back a few years, back when Tom Garamendi, not Tom? Yeah, Tom Garamendi was on the county staff. Whether that was part of it or what, I don't know. It would tie in with about that time frame, 84. I believe Tom was active at that time.
So that was the basis then for this county turning them down?
We don't know.
I couldn't say.
That's just supposition on my part. I don't know what the reasoning was.
Yeah. Why is it being revived, the issue? I mean, it has been revived. 94 it was revived again. Why?
I think it has a lot to do with what's going on in the entire United States as far as demographics, with people that are aging and the over 55 population booming, and corporate downsizing and stripping people's retirement where they're having trouble retiring and being financially independent from their children. And people want to remain a family unit even after they're in their 70s and 80s. And at the Planning Commission, the people that we heard come forward that said that they really wanted to do this, it was all family members saying, gee, I own 80 acres. Why can't I have a little 1,000 square foot unit out back for my mother who, you know, needs to be around people on a daily basis, really can't have an independent living situation. And so I think it has to do with more what's going on in society, not in Amador County.
So this is strictly for the second unit is for some older family members, so they can. I mean, it costs over $35,000. I think, you know, my wife's mother is in a home in $35,000 a year or something like that. My gosh, you know, that's incredible. That's what it's all about then? To find a cheaper way to take care of older folks? Is that what
I don't think it's
second unit
necessarily
dwellings
just
is?
cheaper. It's that a lot of people don't want to send their parents to a convalescent home. You know, that's not the most desired thing to do when you get older. If you could be near your family, that would be more preferred. It's certainly financial also.
So what I'm trying to get at is this what we're talking about when we're talking about second unit dwellings, that it's only for, you know, because we're concerned about the old folks. There's no other people that will live in them or no other reasons for this. It's just we have to accommodate old folks, so we need some mechanism. Is that?
I don't think it's the only reason.
What are other reasons?
I think this is one of the rubs that comes into this when you're talking about just grandma or grandpa or grandma and grandpa. That's one thing. But then you can't dictate as to who is going to live in these second units, so that they become rental units, and you have the possibility of rental units being scattered all over the county.
I think that was part of your argument, at least I read in the paper, and that's why you voted against it at the Planning Commission level, is it not?
We had the people come before us, and most of them did express the place for their parents, a place right next to them on their property, whether they had 5, 10, 20, 40, 80 acres was one. They had this large area of land. Why can't they put the second unit on the house so the parents could be independent? And then another group came in and were talking about the demand for secondary rental units, or for rental units for, I got the impression lower cost housing, if you will, which to me was different entirely from the grandma and grandpa type unit, a guest house where you could have.
That's right, that you can't legally discriminate against tenants versus family members. And, you know, what if somebody's not a quote, you know, blood relative, but they're somehow a close friend of the county, of the family that wants to live in the unit, and the law doesn't allow you really under any circumstances, such as building a condominium project or a housing project or anything like that, to state that it has to be for tenants or owners, and there's really strict guidelines if it's going to be for senior housing.
So it's like your fear is, okay, ostensibly that we're gonna do this for take care of the older folks or something like that, but if they pass on or whatever, I mean, there's no control, and we might suddenly have a whole, just a whole bunch of rental units out there in property.
Well, the numbers that came up, I believe, were 12 a year.
12 a year.
At one time, there was talk about limiting it to 12 a year. I believe that was in the original resolution we got from the board.
It was a consideration.
Okay. How you're going to control it to 12 and where the 12 came from is a magic number, I don't know. But then you get to the size of it.
Yeah.
How large is it going to be? How small will it have to be in order to be considered?
So don't go away. We're going to talk about those aspects of this issue when we return.
Talk with your host, Larry Sinnett.
Concluding segment with the Planning Commissioners Barbara Sinnett and Hap Evans. I hope we're getting to the heart of the matter. And by the way, some of you are watching this before May 6th when the Board of Supervisors reconsider this recommendation from the Planning Commission. I think it went to them 3-2, but we'll get into that here in a moment. And they'll have a chance to vote on it again. Let's get back. Okay, we've established that these second unit dwellings are illegal in Amador County, whatever they are. So we shouldn't have any of them, but obviously we do. So they were all grandfathered in. I mean, you know, whether it's a ranch or whatever it was, certainly there's got to be second unit dwellings out there that people are living in, right?
I believe the board had provisions for an amnesty, didn't they?
Yeah, we didn't. I think we ran out of time to discuss an amnesty program, but I think what you mean is anybody doing it legally right now? And the answer is if you're zoned ag, you can have a secondary dwelling unit. If you're not zoned ag, you cannot. You can have a guest house, but there are pretty strict limitations on guest house. It can only be occupied for 3 months at a time, and it can't have a kitchen.
Maybe
Now,
I'm also saying that surely, you know, maybe even before the Planning Commission or they had ordinances or general plan or anything, there were a lot of second dwellings out there that people were using. What happened to all those? Were they grandfathered in?
no. There are lots of them out there that are not legal, that because the concept is not legal, they cannot call the building department in and get all the appropriate inspections. And I think that there are situations where there are granny flats either as part of houses or next to houses that are not legal in the county.
All right, another contradiction, or at least in my mind, we said they weren't legal, but then you said they are legal in ag.
On agricultural.
So we go from lots in the city of Jackson. Slavics have got 4 acres here or whatever it is, and that's another size. We've got huge ranches and farms and all the rest of it. Where are they allowed to be?
Well, with this ordinance, it would be only on properties that are
Before
over.
the ordinance, where are they allowed before the ordinance passed? Nowhere?
Nowhere.
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 All right. So you're trying to make some, okay, where would
Yeah.
they be
Now?
if the ordinance passes?
If the ordinance passes, depending on what the zoning is to begin with, if you've got let's say a 5-acre parcel and it's zoned 2-acre minimum, then you could put a unit on that parcel. If you're on a 10 acres zoned for 5-acre minimum, you could put it there. If you're on a 9-acre parcel zone 5, no, you couldn't. If you're on 80 acres, you could probably get away with it because I think the minimum zoning is 40 acres in the county. So 80 acres, you're home free, in a manner of speaking.
But if you have a 40-acre parcel, zone 40s, you couldn't do it with the way the ordinance was written. And we did it that way so that people did not have grave concerns over increasing the density. Because really, with the ordinance the way it is right now, you're not doing anything that you couldn't do with your existing zoning anyway.
What are the concerns? I mean, someone said Calaveras 12 a year. I mean, it isn't like that everybody's going to go out and build one tomorrow. What are the great concerns? What are people objecting to about these things? The possibility of someone being allowed to have a second dwelling. You had some arguments, but you know, what are the objections?
I think that Hap brought up a good point, that the fear is that they will later be turned into rental properties. I don't think it's fair to penalize people for the few bad people that might rent out their property and not take good care of it and offend neighbors. And I hope that doesn't happen, but I don't think that it's worth penalizing the rest of us who'd like to have family members live on the property. And from an overall standpoint of affordable housing, if you have rental units near owner-occupied residences, I think that you're going to have a lot more control. I'm sure that if you had a rental property on your land, that you wouldn't allow people to park broken down vehicles, and that there's actually a lot more control when you have it integrated into that versus having all of your affordable housing be all stuck off at the outskirts of town, and that's where I think you get into problems when you shift it out of the residential areas and you put it off by itself. I think we have to get away from the thing that crime is associated with rental property. And I think that seems to be, there's a fear that we're going to bring in low-income people and rent out things, on our property, and it's going to destroy neighborhoods. That hasn't been the case in Calaveras County, and I think it's unlikely to be the case here with, with the overall good quality of people that we have living in Amador County. I really don't think that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. You agree with that, yeah?
I have no qualm with the overall caliber of the people in Amador County.
Yeah.
I think we've got some great people up here, yes. But I think when you take, I live on a 10-acre parcel. There are another couple of 10-acre parcels there and a couple of less than 10 acre, several less than 10. The road is built to handle that minimal number of people coming in. When you increase the population, you're going to increase the traffic. We use the road very little. Our neighbors use it. One of them has 3 girls, so they're going out to and from quite a bit more. The wife and I, our daughter's gone now. Our kids are out of the nest. So you're going to have more traffic on these smaller roads. Your potential for all kinds of things are there, fire access and so forth. The potential for fire alone is increased.
Isn't that where the impact fees come in? Isn't that what an issue before you, that someone wasn't going to vote for it unless it was built in, that the things that you talked about, that, well, all right, they're going to have to pay, if they do this, they're going to have to pay these fees to take care of the road development and the school impact fees and all these other things?
Brian was very emphatic on these, getting the road impact fees, but now we're talking a private road as opposed to a public road. And I don't know that those road impact fees would apply on a private road. We could make some kind of a condition that they would have to bring the road up to a certain spec or put so much rock on it or so wide or something like that on the private road. Mm-hmm. School impact fees, yes, that very definitely was one of Brian's concerns. He wanted to be sure that the school impact fees would be paid because, as he indicated, how long are the parents going to live after they move into this, and then who's coming in after the parents pass on, or grandparents or whatever, who's going to move into the house then and occupy it. Now the children come in with the renters, if you will, and now we do have an impact on the schools where originally with the original tenants there was no impact on the school. So the school impact fee has to be considered into it. And I think I've got that right. Would you say?
So we probably ought to make exactly clear the ordinance that you have passed to the board and exactly what it will do. It was on a 3-2 vote, right?
The board passed it, the board passed it by a 3-2 vote. We passed it by a 3-1 vote. It was fun. We passed it by a 3-1 vote. There was a change of vote, and then another change of vote. At one time we were stalled at 2-2, and then because we wanted to be sure and get something else in, I think it had to do with review. Mm-hmm. We canceled out our first vote completely and re-voted on it and ended up again with the 3-1 vote.
I thought it was your vote was a recommendation to the board to pass this ordinance. Now you just told me that
resolution.
It was a 3-1
what's
vote
the issue before the supervisors on Tuesday?
to pass the
6th.
ordinance.
Yeah, it will be
Pass the ordinance.
to make it an ordinance.
What does the ordinance do exactly?
The ordinance would allow a person to have a secondary dwelling unit on a parcel that is 2 acres or larger that would meet all of the current impact fees, fire, school district, building codes. It would be permitted, and it could not exceed the current density.
2 acres or larger regardless of what kind of zoning?
Well, in order to do it on a 2-acre parcel, you'd have to have 1 acre zoning, so that
No, okay, we're back to the, okay,
Yeah.
I see. Nothing
1 acre.
simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
So,
nothing.
so the argument is you're not increasing the traffic in a neighborhood that's anything different than what the property is already zoned for in the general plan.
Has the board changed? I guess it has changed since the last time. Any way to anticipate what's liable to happen at the board level?
I don't think so. We have changed what came to us, the resolution which came to us before it went back, it goes back to them. How they will feel about the changes that we made and shipped back to them for their ordinance is up in the air. If depends on how they have the votes, what they want the most, whether they want to get that ordinance passed or they want to change some of our recommendations. Your guess is as good as mine.
Wouldn't allowing these units to be built, I mean, wouldn't that help the housing market and drive prices down? You know, the old market argument, like let's build things and if there's some competition for rentals and all the rest of it, it'll drive the price down, it'll become affordable, you know, instead of kind of putting a halter, you know, you can only do it if you do this and you do this and you do this and you do this and you wind up not getting any.
I don't think affordable is really an issue that came before us. The only extent of the affordable and the size had to do again with a parent's or a grandparent's or a mother-in-law, father-in-law type cottage.
Yeah, but when they all pass away, these things are going to be rentals.
That's my concern.
Well, there's
Right.
also the argument that they'll be purchased by people that want to have the same quality of life with family members living on their property.
Yeah.
And that a new person coming to town would say, gee, I want to buy that place because it's got a place for my parents. So I think it could go either way.
Maybe
And
you
there's a
should-
market out there,
yeah,
definitely for people that want to have their family live near them.
Maybe you should inquire, since every other county in the state has this, how is it working in Calaveras or any other place? I mean, they having any problems with this?
Well, the information we had is some of them have much more stringent or restrictive clauses. I think we ended up with a 1,000-foot detached, was it maximum square?
Well,
did
actually,
we go
since
on
we
that?
changed
1,000
to the
foot was the-
existing zoning, we didn't have the restriction.
Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't put any restriction on
No, not for
but
detached.
some of the other counties have restrictions down to, was it
Yeah, on the
465?
size and things like that, restricting the size of the unit.
465 square feet, 800 square feet, or 1,000 square feet.
I think the conversation mostly has been about separate, but I mean, you have this attached business. I mean, is there any
Attached
different?
and detached, yes.
Any issues involved in that? Is that a simpler matter, just to attach something to a building? I mean, why should there be any problems with that?
I don't think that there would be, and I think the majority of what you see people doing right now is attached units because they need to conceal what's going on because you can't build a separate building right now. It would be illegal. So I think that some people will want to make it attached and some people will want detached units, and that we ought to look at the grandfathering in clause of a lot of the existing units, which I think are attached, that have been done without building permits.
What are the size of these units according to this ordinance? Any limitation on the size?
In the ordinance that we drafted, there's no limit if it corresponds to the existing density, which is what our recommendation to the board was.
Wasn't there a restriction on the attached, though, that couldn't be more than, the attached unit couldn't be greater than the existing unit? Something along those lines.
I forget, you know, we changed it so many times. I'm not sure.
That might be where I'm trying to get that 1,000 square foot in there.
Yeah.
But it had something to do with the attached unit couldn't be larger so that it would dwarf the original unit. I think that was what we
There
went
could be
for
something
there.
in there like that.
What other issues in this? We covered them all. I mean, the size, all the things down here, impact fees. Yeah, I was thinking about that a while ago. All right, impact. Anyone have any rough idea? Okay, somebody builds a 1,000-foot second unit. Any idea what the impact fees would be? I mean, this ordinance that you put together? I
Well,
mean,
they're
is
not
there-
cheap.
No.
You know, they're,
Well, okay, give me some.
you're not going to save any money versus building a house on a separate lot. The only thing that you're going to save is the cost of a separate lot.
But the fees, it'd be
So-
just like you were building a separate, I mean,
Yes.
as far as the fees, school impact fees and all the
School
rest of
impact
it?
fees, road impact fees.
Yeah. Actually, it'd be more expensive because it contains a clause for school impact fees in excess of the current $1.85 per square foot of $3,100. So the school fees are actually going to cost more if you build it on your own lot versus a separate lot.
I think we started this conversation talking about affordable housing, and it sounds like this is not necessarily affordable housing at all, is it? At least when you initially build it.
I don't think so.
So-
What does it cost to build a house now per square foot?
I don't know.
$60 a square foot.
Is it 60? Last I'd heard it was up to 75, so I'm surprised.
Well, I think you could do it
dropped
for
down a bit.
60 if, you know, it's not real elaborate, so. I think it's really more a matter of family convenience, and it is affordable for having your parents nearby when you look at the cost of what it would take if you had to have your parents stay in some type of a semi-independent living quarters. It's still cheaper that way.
Yeah. Why should the,
I could debate that one on you too, I think.
Yeah?
it seems like a minimum of people that might be affected, it's hard to say, but why should the people be concerned about this issue? I mean, should they be concerned about this issue? No, one way or the other. From your point of view, you think it's a good idea. Why should the people out there want to do this?
I think because they may be in a position someday where family members need to take care of family members.
And their options right now are to do what? Have them in a home.
Do it
very
illegally.
expensive home, do it illegally in the house.
Doing it in the house would be totally legal.
If
have
you
a
didn't
separate
have
room
a
in the house,
separate, if you didn't
no
have
problem.
another kitchen.
But if you had to have some room over the garage or something like that.
You can't have a second kitchen. That's what makes it illegal.
Right.
From your point of view, why should people be concerned about this and hope that the board says no?
If you live on that 5, 10, 20, 80 acre parcel, whatever, and you are happy with the way it is, and the people around you are in the same zoning, and you want to keep that, then you don't want this ordinance to pass. Maybe it's a case of saying the status quo in a
Is this
matter
a
of speaking.
drawbridge syndrome or something in a sense?
no, I don't think
we like
so.
it the way it is. We don't want.
Tom, when we first got out here today, was talking about Sue won't let him cut any of the trees down out here
Yeah,
because she doesn't like the noise. It's a noise buffer.
yeah.
And it's the same way when you live out in the country and you've got 5, 10, 15, whatever acreage you've got the trees out there, you can do things that you can't do in town. And the more homes you bring in, the less freedom you have. That's probably the best way of putting it.
And your response, and we'll conclude this conversation.
It's not doing anything that's not already allowed in the current zoning with the way the ordinance is written. And if you move in next door to somebody and they own a 40-acre parcel and it's zoned for 220s, they have the right to split off a 20-acre parcel and build a house.
That's true.
Or they have a right to build a little house out back for their mother. And from that standpoint, you're not increasing the traffic because it's already zoned for that.
Any final remarks? Have we covered? I hope we've covered the
I
subject
think
fairly
we've
well.
covered it pretty well.
Well, I hope so. Have any more questions? Board of Supervisors on Tuesday, if you watch this before that, going to consider this ordinance, and maybe you should be there if it might affect you. Thank you again for
Thanks,
being on
Larry.
the program. Always nice to see you.
Good
HAP?
to see you, Larry.
All right. What does HAP stand for? You still not?
Let me see if I can find something that'll tell me.
I'm sorry, we don't have time.
Not a thing
so-
there.
Thanks for being with us again. We'll see you again next time.
Let's Talk is a Tom Slavik television production. All rights reserved.